Today on the Fallon Forum, we are joined by labor lawyer and author Tom Gagan and Ron Yarnell. We're going to discuss Taft-Hartley, something that does not raise a high enough level of awareness in the public consciousness. We're also going to talk about the Food Sovereignty Prize, an effort that has grown up in response to the World Food Prize. We'll start the conversation shortly here on the Fallon Forum.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Ed Fallon here, folks. Gateway Market and Cafe is your locally owned source for specialty groceries. Enjoy chef-crafted, prepared foods, artisan baked goods, organic produce, specialty cheeses, and hand-selected wines and craft beer. Visit the lively cafe for breakfast, lunch, or dinner 7 days a week. Gateway Market is centrally located on the corner of Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway and Woodland Ave. Stop by or visit www.gatewaymarket.com for more details. That's Gateway Market, folks. Good food, great community.
This moment of silence brought to you by Tally's Restaurant Bar and Catering, home of Des Moines' premier rooftop dining experience. Located in the heart of Beaverdale, Tally's offers speedy and affordable rooftop lunch, catering for events both large and small, innovative cuisine, as well as vegetarian and gluten-free menus. Come to Tally's for live music, dry-aged steaks, Sunday brunch, and all-you-can-eat ribs every Monday night. Tally's Restaurant Bar and Catering at 2712 Beaver Avenue. Call 279-2067. That's 279-2067.
Times are tough, and most people are just trying to make their cars last a little bit longer. That's why you should know about Sargent's Garage in Des Moines. You can trust Sargent's to make the right diagnosis and give you a fair price. Whether it's a routine oil change or a major repair, Sargent's always does outstanding work. So don't give up on that old car just yet. Call Sargent's Garage at 246-8149. That's 246-8149 for Sargent's Garage. Open Sesame is Des Moines' premier Lebanese cafe. This month, Open Sesame is offering an unbeatable lunch special on Monday and Tuesdays. Mention the Fallon Forum when you order anything on Open Sesame's delicious lunch menu and get the second item for half price. That's right, buy one, get one for half price. Open Sesame's pita wraps, salads, soup, and mouth-watering Mideastern specialties will have you and your dining partner coming back again and again. Open Sesame at 313 East Locust Street in Des Moines' historic East Village.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Thank you, Andy Fleming and Brother Trucker, for a great tune to kick the show off here. I also want to thank Physicians for Social Responsibility and the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club, and also Gateway Market for sponsoring this segment of the program. And I want to invite you right up front, folks. You can always call in and join this conversation. It's 244-0077. This is your mouthpiece as well as mine, as well as my guest. You can join the conversation at any time. We'll try to fit you in as we can. 244-0077 or toll free 855-244-0077. And, of course, my email address is fallonforum@gmail.com. I did just get a text message, and I kind of agree with the writer. I know the writer, the guy who sent this, is also a bicyclist. And let's see, he says, the dumb guy that got hit on the bike, this is the fellow up in Alleman. I'm not sure I'd call him a dumb guy. I think he's a special ed teacher, and he was probably a decent guy. Probably made a bad call. He was riding in pitch dark in rain with no lights on a county highway, and they blame the girl. Well, yeah, if the girl was texting, that is against the law. But, Chuck, good point. I mean, it's absolutely, if you're going to be on a bike, you absolutely need to be wearing visible clothing and having a light front and back. I mean, my bike is sensible. I mean, I think it's fair to call you sensible, is it not?
Most days.
Most days, okay. And I get tired though of people who say that we should be taxing bikes, registering bikes, putting fees and stuff on bikes. No, we should actually be getting a tax credit. How would you feel about a tax credit, Bike?
I think that would be great. So wait, do they want to, like, little kids have bikes? Do they want to tax?
I don't know how far down they'd go, whether they start taxing them at the same age you drive, or or even a kid on a 5-year-old on a trike. I don't know. But, I mean, we reward good behavior in this society all the time. Tax credits for kids, for home mortgages. Heck, we don't even ask corporations to do much to give them massive tax credits. Why not a tax credit for your contribution to reducing climate change by being a bike, huh?
I think that's a wonderful idea. We should get started on that right away.
All right, well, we'll draft legislation after the show. But we have other things to talk about. Speaking of legislation, back in 1947, Taft-Hartley was passed. Despite the veto by President Truman, Democrats as well as Republicans supported overriding his veto, and the rest is history. But we forget history. So joining us today in the studio is Ron Yarnell. And on the phone is Tom Gagan. He is an author, a labor lawyer. Tom, thank you for joining us.
Sure. Thank you for inviting me.
Where are we talking with you from? You are in what city?
Chicago.
Chicago. Oh, you could practically shout and we'd hear you from here.
That's right. And if the phone goes dead here, I'll just raise the volume.
Just raise the volume. Well, thanks for joining us. And Ron was kind enough to invite you to join us, and I'm glad he did that. Ron is a student of lots of things political, including labor law. But give us the nutshell version of what Taft-Hartley is and why people should be concerned about it.
Well, it was a huge issue in the late 1940s, and it was some might say the beginning of the end of an attempt to turn the United States into, the kind of social democracy that you see in a lot of Northern European countries, Germany, Sweden, and so forth. It's a law that essentially it made illegal everything that the labor unions were doing in the 1930s to organize. Mass picketing, secondary boycotts.
What do you mean by a secondary boycott?
Well, a secondary boycott is a boycott where, say, people at one plant wouldn't cross a picket line of another group of workers, or that they, or say, for example, drivers for a trucking company wouldn't load material onto the truck because they were going to a plant that was on strike. So that kind of...
Okay, so what one union shop
they
helping...
weren't in the primary dispute with the employer. They were only secondarily into the dispute.
Right.
But those employees wanted to show support with the striking employees.
Right. So
that's illegal to show support with the striking employees.
One labor shop, one union shop helping out another one, essentially.
Well, it didn't have to be a union shop at all.
Okay. Yeah.
It could be in a right-to-work state. It could be any place.
Okay.
That has nothing to do with it. What it is just the prohibition of any group of workers not performing work for their own employer that employer wants them to do because they support what's going on in another strike. And so when groups of workers got together to strike, it was vastly more effective than if, as the law now is, only one group of workers can go on strike and everybody else has to continue working for their own respective employers.
Otherwise, they are committing a crime, an offense.
But that wasn't the only thing that changed. I mean, there up until perhaps the biggest single change, and it took a while for that to be realized, was the change to the Norris-LaGuardia Act. So what had happened in American history up until 1930? Unions couldn't organize. Why? Because all unions were illegal conspiracies.
Right.
And
communist plots.
Yeah. Well, they didn't say that necessarily, but they just said they were conspiracies that were in violation of the antitrust laws because workers shouldn't combine to try to fix their wages, quote unquote. And this was supported by federal injunctions. So some of your listeners will remember from reading in grade school about the Pullman strike and so on and so forth. The United States Army was sent in to support these injunctions that the federal courts would issue against the strikes because they were illegal conspiracies to interfere with the mails or interstate commerce, or they come up with some reason. And 1932, Norris-LaGuardia Act, put together by Fiorello LaGuardia and George Norris, who's a senator from Nebraska, very famous progressive, and supported by people like Felix Frankfurter of Harvard, a great professor of labor law and Supreme Court justice, said that the federal courts just had to get out of that business. Well, now they're back in the business, and any time that a union goes on strike, at least while a contract is in effect, it's illegal. So the ability of labor to try to resolve issues with strikes of one kind or another is illegal just about 99% of the time. Now, there are windows when contracts expire when they can strike, but the Taft-Hartley Act was a huge change in that it restored the power of the federal courts
to
enjoin strikes, to enjoin mass picketing, to stop these secondary boycotts, so that all the things that labor was doing to organize in the 1930s and 1940s suddenly became illegal.
Right. I mean, Ron Yarnell, and I don't know whether you and Ron have had a chance to talk, but Ron's in the studio with me. Ron is a frequent and very articulate commentator on all matters political, with a particular interest, I think, in labor issues. Ron, you want to jump in at some point here?
Well, first, Tom, I want to thank you for writing your book, Which Side Are You On? I looked up on Amazon, and it's in print now for 21 years, so that's pretty impressive. And when I read it 20 years ago, I was so impressed by it, I gave it to friends of mine who I knew were interested in labor issues as a Christmas present. So thanks for writing that book. It was really helpful to me.
Oh, thanks for giving it a tout. One day that book will be older than I am.
Yeah, it's not too shabby when the book's in print for 21 years. I guess my concern is that people wonder how come workers, employees, they don't want to organize, they don't want to join unions, and it's kind of interpreted to be, well, they don't see unions as really useful, they don't want to have their freedom restricted, or any number of things. And most people are entirely unaware of the heavy legal restrictions that are placed on labor organizing as a result of Taft-Hartley. We have this remarkable thing in our country, this historical amnesia, where that whole era of the Taft-Hartley Act in the 1930s, labor organizing in the 1940s, that's almost eliminated from people's mentalities. They don't know the struggles that went on. They don't know the history there.
Right.
Yes. Well, in 1947, that act was passed to make illegal everything labor had been doing up till then, because labor was about to start organizing the South. And when you said earlier in the program that Democrats supported it, it should be said these were Southern Democrats, people who would be Republicans now, very right-wing. And they were very concerned about the impact that it would have on poor Southern whites, who they depended upon for low-wage labor, but, especially African Americans. So there was a racial animus in getting that passed because the ultimate nightmare, and this was before there was a significant or the great African American migration out of the South. You know, racially the United States African Americans were very, very isolated in the South. You know, the great nightmare was that black people would join unions. So Taft-Hartley went into effect just as the CIO, Congress of Industrial Organizations, which had been organized by John L. Lewis of the mine workers during the 1930s and the steel workers, were poised for going in for something called Operation Dixie, where they were going to put Southern whites and blacks in labor unions. And
so you're saying that
we have the South is union free, and that's where all the foreign auto companies go to have low wage labor, and none of that would have happened if Taft-Hartley had not been passed.
So you're saying, though, Tom, that Taft-Hartley was not just an anti-labor initiative, but also a racially motivated initiative.
Well, the crucial votes came from the Southern Democrats.
Okay, has there been any serious attempt in recent years to try to repeal Taft-Hartley or somehow introduce legislation that gets around the problems that it's created?
The latter, not the former. There's been no attempt to appeal Taft-Hartley, but there has been an attempt to at least put some teeth in labor laws when employers break them. So when unions break them, you know, the penalties are contempt of court, fines, and jail. When employers break the labor laws, you know, the Wagner Act, it's back pay, net back pay, you know, after 3 or 4 or 5 years of litigation, no legal fees, no discovery.
And maybe an additional tax credit while we're at it.
And maybe an additional tax credit. So, you know, from an economic point of view, you know, a rational person who wanted to keep unions out would deliberately violate the labor laws because the penalties for an employer are non-existent. Whereas for a union, if the union violates secondary boycott laws, they're subject to triple damages, contempt fines, injunctions, jail, blah, 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 blah. And there isn't any kind of commensurate penalties for violating the labor law. So the attempt has been to try to, not to have contempt fines or put employers in jail, but at least make employers liable for damages.
Something that Ron and I have talked about, and others as well, is the distinct lack of, Charles Goldman was on the show with a specific conversation a while back, the specific lack of any discussion about the minimum wage law in the presidential campaign. That's an issue that clearly distinguishes Obama from Romney. And I understand getting into Taft-Hartley and Glass-Steagall might be a little bit complex in terms of talking points, but you would think that the minimum wage would be an easy conversation to have. And you would think that Obama would want to have that conversation with 80% of Americans supporting a decent minimum wage.
Well, it's a good question. I don't know why they haven't done it. My sense, I'm no expert on presidential politics, but my sense about the Obama campaign is that there's very little that he can promise, given the gridlock that's in Washington. So, you get out there and you make these promises, and then you have the Republicans come forward in 4 years and say, you failed to deliver, when it was, of course, the Republicans who blocked it with a filibuster, the vote in the House. To get, a minimum wage increase in the House of Representatives would be DOA, be dead on arrival.
There's no doubt. If anything, they'd probably like to repeal the law.
They'd like to reduce the minimum wage. And even if the House were to flip Democratic, there's still the filibuster rule in the Senate. You really need 60 votes to increase the minimum wage in the country now, and in the Senate, and that's a huge hurdle.
One thing that's always been a bother to me, a struggle I had, is that the Democratic Party always likes to pose itself as the party of labor, but it never seriously, to my knowledge, launched an effort to repeal Taft-Hartley, and it seems to use labor like maybe the Republicans use conservative religious outfits. They're convenient during the election year, and then after you get elected, they get put away in some drawer somewhere for future reference. But I don't really get a sense that the Democratic Party in any real terms is more pro-labor than anyone else in our society.
I think they're more pro-labor. I understand your argument, and I have been a sometime representative of Chicago Teachers Union, which just got through a strike against Rahm Emanuel, who some say is trying to bust the union. But at the end of the day, even somebody like Emanuel or Obama, who've been tough on teacher unions and other not so labor-friendly positions, the labor has real leverage with the Democrats in power in a way that it doesn't with the Republicans in power. So it does make a difference.
Didn't it once have, though, a leverage with labor? Because if I'm not mistaken, John L. Lewis, who's like the patron saint of 20th century labor, he was a registered Republican.
Well, yeah.
Nixon courted the Teamster endorsement, and there seemed to be a lot more openness towards labor from Republican precincts, and that's no longer the case. Now they're outright hostile.
Well, the greatest labor law ever passed for labor was the Norris-LaGuardia Act, and Senator Norris and Congressman LaGuardia were both Republicans. So keep that in mind. But, the Republican Party is much different. Lincoln was a pro-labor person, very pro-labor. You read some of his stuff, it sounds almost Marxist in terms of support of the working man against capital and so on and so forth. The world's changed. But I'd say this about the Democrats. The only way that the Democrats can remain the Democrats and not morph into something that is unsustainable, I think, as a majoritarian party.
And I'd say hasn't that already happened? But continue, and then we'll.
But is to be pro-labor. If the Democrats really depend in some way in the end on having a more egalitarian country, or at least one with a strong middle class, There's no way that that can happen without bringing back the labor movement.
Right.
So, I mean, just as a policy matter, for the Democratic Party to survive, it has to bring back a labor movement. There's no alternative.
And it's not happening. So why is it not happening?
That's why the Democratic Party is in such terrible trouble right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the end, my vote is that there are enough intelligent people in the party to realize that unless they become a pro-labor party again, like the Democrats were in, say, the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, they're going to go the way of the Wood Party. They'll crack up and disappear.
Tom, I would suggest that we are witnessing that happening. That's what's happening right now.
Well, I don't think it is happening. I think it could happen, and we're at a crossroads in that respect. But you know, I could be wrong. I do think that if you read Obama's Osawatomie speech, you clearly see the tension that the party is in. On the one hand, he now grasps that the problem is the distribution of income. You can't read that speech and not appreciate that. And you can see that at different points in the way he's gone after Romney in this campaign and his one-point plan that Romney has and so forth. He grasps it. On the other hand, he's still locked into this notion that rather than labor law reform, the answer is to send everybody to college. But he's starting to hit a wall on that, and you can see his kind of frustration, I think, even in his own attempt to conceptualize it to himself. You know, so he's backed away from college because it just makes no sense to keep talking about that, which he did for years.
Okay, so why doesn't he jump in on again the minimum wage law? It seems like a winning prospect for.
I know. You're asking me. I'm not a
Ron. I mean, I don't know why.
I live here in Chicago. So, you know,
I mean, Ron. Maybe I would say it's probably because
somebody in Washington.
I would say it's largely because of the influence of money in politics. I mean, Democrats used to win elections on shoe leather, and now they've become as competitive with Republicans when it comes to raising money, and they raise a lot of it from the wrong sources.
And it's obviously not Obama's style to get confrontational and contentious down in the trenches and do anything that reeks of quote-unquote class warfare. That's just not his style.
Well, they're trying to do everything to keep from rocking the boat. I agree with that. On the other hand, I sense that even he perceives as they're running out of options. You know, when he asked what can the federal government do to, you know, in the first debate, I mean, what was his answer? His answer was race to the top, you know, this education program, you know, better teacher evaluation.
How did that settle with the Chicago Teachers Union?
Well, I don't know how it fares with the Chicago Teachers Union, but he can't even believe that.
Yeah. Well.
So, I mean, even within the education profession, I mean, the you know, Diane Ravitch and other educators have just torn to shreds this whole Arne Duncan Obama initiative. And he knows that. He's a bright guy.
Let me ask you, this is a bit off the subject of Taft-Hartley and the broader issues of labor, but how does it settle with you and with other labor people in Chicago that Rahm Emanuel, you know, a key national Democratic figure, was the face of the opposition to the teachers' union strike?
Well, my relationship with the Chicago Teachers Union is very, 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 very limited. So I don't speak for them, and I've been representing them only in one case. So please don't think that this is what Chicago Teachers.
I think I counted 6 or 7 varies. So point taken.
Yeah, and other people in labor, I think some of them think Rahm Emanuel is the devil, and so on and so forth. My own personal opinion. You know, I go back and forth.
Does it say anything about the?
I think he's more of a Democrat than Richard Daley, and he's much an.
But is he more of a Democrat than Abe Lincoln? If I can bring another Illinois resident into the conversation.
That's kind of an anachronistic question. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. I'd say this, that it made a huge difference that the Chicago Teachers Union were striking against a Democratic mayor like Rahm Emanuel rather than a Republican governor like Scott Walker.
A difference in terms of the outcome.
Sure.
No doubt. Yeah.
And, he has, since the strike, he's replaced the superintendent who really rubbed nerves raw here with somebody who's much more union friendly. It's just in 1,000 years, and you can demonize Rahm Emanuel all you like, and I understand the case for doing so, but in 1,000 years, in 10,000 years, that would never have happened with a Republican office holder. Mm-hmm. So it makes a difference.
So to summarize again.
But that doesn't mean that they aren't necessarily the enemy in any given strike.
Right.
Sometimes they are.
I think it'll be an ongoing conversation as to whether the Democratic Party is salvageable and whether there is any hope for it really beginning to bring labor on board in a way that's meaningful beyond just shoe leather and financial support during an election.
I'd say this before ending. There's a lot of talk about the Democrats, turning on the public employee unions. If the public employee unions had managed to keep anybody from being laid off, the Democrats would be cruising to re-election because the unemployment rate is essentially explained by the huge drop in public sector employment, and that to the extent that the unions were stopping that, they were the best friend that the Democratic Party in its re-election drive right now has ever had.
I think it also bears some comment that one of the reasons that public sector unions still survive and are strong is because they're not subject to the same laws as workers, employees, and unions in the private sector.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, Tom, thank you for joining us. Tom Gagan, folks. Labor lawyer and author, and again, tell us the names of the books you've written, Tom.
They're an embarrassing number.
Oh well,
but I've written 5, which sort of seems hard to believe. But the one that is sold that Ron mentioned is "Which Side Are You On?" and It's a labor book. The last one I wrote is called "Were You Born on the Wrong Continent?" It's about why countries like Germany have been thriving and why they offer a better way of life and have a middle class in a way that we don't.
All right. Well, worth checking out. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Maybe we'll have to have you back on the show sometime.
Sure.
All right. And Ron, thank you for joining us as well in the studio.
No problem.
Ron's gonna be back with me next week. We're gonna talk about the final debate. Anyway, I've got Heather Ryan coming on to preview it with me, and you coming on with me to debrief it. We'll see how that works.
Okay, look forward to it.
I think Obama needs another stunning performance next week if he's going to nail this thing down. Anyway, folks, we'll be back in a few minutes with another interesting conversation. You have heard of the World Food Prize, of course. Perhaps you have also by now heard of the Food Sovereignty Prize. This is an initiative that is attempting to provide a recognition to someone doing sustainable agricultural work. We're going to talk about that when we come back on the Fallon Forum.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Hey folks, it's Ed Fallon. I want to tell you about saving energy and saving money. Tim Reynolds with Reynolds Energy Solutions will give you a comprehensive energy audit that will cost you nothing. And Tim will identify the many ways in which you can reduce energy use while saving money. Now, I had Tim over for an audit last month, and I was amazed, I tell you, at how much energy was going through the roof, out the windows, the back door. You get it. So before the cold winds of winter really blow hard, give Tim a call at 802-2801. That's 802-2801.
Host is a locally owned restaurant in downtown Des Moines that focuses its food and philosophy on embracing simplicity. The majority of Host's food is from local farmers who practice sustainable and health-conscious agriculture. Much of what you'll find on your plate is a familiar comfort food, presented with a modern and tasty interpretation. Host is open for lunch Monday through Friday from 11 to 2, and also available for private dinner events and special themed dinners throughout the month. So, check out Host at 13th and Locust in Des Moines.
With warm weather finally here, it's time to think about upgrading the efficiency of your furnace and air conditioner. Leonard Tinker Heating and Cooling has provided honest, competent service for over 20 years. Whether it's your home or business, for repair work or to install a more energy-efficient furnace or air conditioner, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422. That's 263-0422. For honest, competent heating and cooling service, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422.
Wow, some wedding.
Yeah, I've never seen a bride in coveralls.
Right, and skipping down the aisle to accordion music.
Not to mention the reception. That wedding cake was a freaking fruit cake.
It's your wedding. Don't leave anything to chance. Diana's Wedding Cakes. Using only the finest, freshest ingredients with free on-time delivery and setup. Choose one of Diana's custom designs or create your own. Call Diana's Wedding Cakes, 641-275-9279. That's 641-275-9279.
Well, hi, I'm Rob Spearman. I'm a broker-owner of RE/MAX Real Estate Concepts in Des Moines, Iowa. Give us a call if you're looking at buying or selling a home, or if you're having trouble on your mortgage payments or looking to purchase foreclosures. We have the agents to help you, experienced, outstanding agents. Our office number is 515-276-2872. Or if you'd like to look at homes, go to our website, homeconnectusa.com.
There is hope. Visit groundwire.net and chat now with a live coach for answers.
Oh my God, Becky, did you see her bumper? I know she's had work done. Just last week, she had dimples and stuff all over, and now look.
Yeah, dimples and stuff. Yeah.
I'm Jamie Lasher from Minor Wreck Express. We're here to help with all the dents, dings, and drama of car ownership. Call 278-0101 or visit minorwreck.com for details. We'll see you in the fast lane.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back, folks. That's Mr. Baber's Neighbors returning us to the conversation. Actually, it's going to be a very different conversation now. We're going to be talking about food, corporate agriculture, sustainable agriculture, and that is a perfect segue into an endorsement that I really want to make for one of our business supporters, Gateway Market. Gateway Market is in the Sherman Hill neighborhood of Des Moines. Not just a fantastic grocery store with lots of local food, but a cafe as well and a catering service. You know, I get tired of seeing folks run out west to pump their money into businesses like Trader Joe's and whatnot that pump their money into some corporate headquarters in some other part of the country. Don't have to do that. Everything you want is at Gateway. Gateway is locally owned, great corporate citizen, and they have, I mean, I can't find anything anything I want I can get there. Anything. So check them out, folks. 20th and Woodland, Gateway Market in downtown Des Moines in the Sherman Hill neighborhood. This section of the show, too, will be brought to you by Reynolds Energy Solutions, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about why that business is important to our energy economy here in central Iowa. But I'm excited to welcome to the program Tristan Quinn Thibodeau. Did I say it right?
Yeah, Thibodeau.
Thibodeau. H is silent. Okay, and George Naylor. George is a guy I've known forever. He's a farmer up in Greene County. Farms non-GMO corn and beans on a family farm that's been in your family for what, 3 generations?
Yep, since 1919.
1919?
Mm-hmm, yeah, and my family farmed in Greene County and Carroll County since about, 1890.
Wow. So you get deep roots.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
And Tristan, you are from Washington, D.C.
No.
Sorry?
No, I was born in Alaska, grew up in Maine, and now live in New York City.
New York City.
Brooklyn.
I get New York and Washington mixed up all the time. Wall Street, K Street, they're all the same to me in my mind. Okay.
One's Money Town, one's Power Town.
Yeah, and they combine pretty beautifully these days, don't they?
Somebody once said that this country's headquarters is in New York City on Wall Street, and our hindquarters is in Washington, D.C.
That's clever. I like that. All right, so you were in Des Moines regarding the Food Sovereignty Prize. You were giving a talk tonight.
That's right.
At the Unitarian Church. This is the 4th year now we've had a Food Sovereignty Prize given to somebody who's been an international leader in sustainable agriculture.
That's true. Yeah, usually it's been we've been giving the Food Sovereignty Prize along with a big national conference of food justice and local food economy advocates. But this year was the first year we did a standalone event on October 10th in New York City at the Smithsonian Institute's Museum of the American Indian. We had
interesting venue,
very appropriate venue.
Why is that? Why did you choose that location?
Well, one, it's a beautiful museum, beautiful space. If you're in New York City, go check out the museum. But at the same time, the issue of food sovereignty is something that's very important and very resonant with the indigenous people of the Americas, because they were the original food sovereign people. And food sovereignty, for viewers and listeners who may not know, is the right of communities to determine their own food policies. So,
and corn has changed a little bit since those days.
Since the Native American days?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it certainly has.
And I mean, in Georgia, I think 90% of the corn and soybeans planted in Iowa are GMO corn.
Correct.
And what you're growing is not.
Non-GMO, yes.
How is that working for you?
Well, it works great. Luckily, there are a few companies like AgriGold and LG Seeds that provide some non-GMO varieties that are just as good as their good varieties.
Did you have any trouble finding a place to market them? Will the grain elevators make provisions for non-GMO corn?
Generally, my corn just gets marketed as ordinary corn, but I do have once in a while a market where I get a premium, 35-40 cent per bushel premium because it's non-GMO.
I would think that'd be something you'd want to do every bushel if you could.
Yeah, I can. It just kind of depends on the transportation situation, what's called the basis.
But you used to raise conventional corn.
Well, I still raise conventional corn.
Sorry,
it's just,
you used to raise GMO corn too, didn't
no,
you?
I never did. No, I swore off GMOs from the very beginning.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, that's the kind of farmer. I mean, obviously George is not up for the prize, but maybe I'll nominate him for next year.
No, yeah, I don't deserve it, and I don't claim to be sustainable or by any means. I'm still raising corn and soybeans just about like everybody else, but I don't raise GMOs, so that means I don't drench everything in Roundup.
Right. So, but I would imagine that decreases the cost of your inputs too.
Oh, I don't know exactly. I suppose. I mean, the seed I buy costs much less than the genetically modified seed, but my herbicide program probably costs a little more. Mm-hmm. So it's about a break-even thing, but yeah.
But we're particularly interested in corn and beans in this state, obviously, Tristan. But
and hogs,
and hogs, and DeCoster chickens, I'm afraid.
We're familiar with DeCoster. As well.
There's an article in today's paper that has me just my feathers are ruffled regarding these ridiculous comments about chickens and eggs. But we'll talk about that some other day. But you look at the broad spectrum of agriculture across the globe, and this year's winner is from South Korea.
Mm-hmm. The Korean Women's Peasant Association. And so, the Food Sovereignty Prize was really designed and developed as an alternative to the World Food Prize. There's an alternative to the Nobel Peace Prize called the Right Livelihoods Award, and that's given out to some great individuals, but also organizations doing real work around the world. And so, one thing that is special about the Korean Women's Peasant Association is that they've highlighted the issue of free trade and what the impacts of free trade, and specifically free trade agreements.
We're going to put free in quotes here because it's called free trade, but it's really become freedom for big corporations to make a lot more money and put smaller enterprises out of business, in my opinion.
No, and I think that's the opinion that's what the facts show in South Korea as well as the United States. We've had a decade and a half since NAFTA, and we know exactly what NAFTA did. It destroyed the Mexican farming industry, especially around corn, and now we have a lot of immigrants looking for work in the United States.
And
we have drug cartels running through Mexico.
It's funny, I don't hear the presidential candidates talking about that and making those connections.
No, and you don't hear the World Food Prize. When they talk about hunger, they don't talk about free trade. They also don't talk about land grabs. There's a global land grab happening, so we recognize the group in Honduras that's fighting land grabs, trying to preserve land rights.
That was the winner last year?
No, this is an honorable mention. So the way we also structure the prize a little bit different, where we have one winner and then 3 honorable mentions. So one was preserving land rights in Honduras. Honduras is also, there's a coup in 2009, and there's been a lot of issues with drugs and drug traffickers throughout the rural areas in Honduras as well. We also honored a group in Sri Lanka that's trying to preserve coastal waterfront for small-scale fishermen. And right now, Sri Lanka is also coming out of a war, and all their coastal lands being sold to tourist developers for big hotels. Right. They're not working with the local fishermen to try.
It's a good point. Food sovereignty is not just about crops. We think about we're landlocked here. We think about crops, but or livestock. But I mean, fisheries, very important element of the food system too. But now let me ask you, why you say this grew up in response to the World Food Prize.
Yeah.
What problems did you and your organization see with the World Food Prize that needed to be responded to?
Well, you know, it's very. The story of agriculture is not told to the American public very often. I think, and the World Food Prize pretty much has a total control of that market about communicating what's going on in agriculture. Maybe the last time Americans really got a real view of the agriculture and food system was in Omnivore's Dilemma when George was featured.
That was about 5 years ago.
That was about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't
Michael
know
Pollan's book, Omnivore's Dilemma. Yeah.
But so, you know, the story coming from the World Food Prize is that there's not enough food, is that we solve hunger by creating more food, that farmers are better off when their yields are higher, that it's better when we can ship food all around the world, you know, as easy as possible, that if one area is in a drought, well, the best way to protect them is to have some country somewhere else send them grain.
And I'll say, you know, the proponents, the World Food Prize folks have done a great job at messaging what they want us to hear, and that is that population growth is uncontrollable. It's going to continue to rise to 9 or 10 billion.
Yeah.
People are eating more meat. That's a fact. I mean, both of those are facts. But then the logical solution, and it's an easy solution to come to in your mind. Obviously, we have more people eating more high quality food. We need to produce more food. It's a logical conclusion.
Yeah.
But they don't often fill in the detail. I mean, if you read the articles in today's paper, the opinion pieces, very little gets into what that means in terms of actual production, except they imply that, you know, folks like you, George, are probably going to be passé, and that what we're looking at is larger and larger farms, like some of the stuff going on in Africa.
Right, and also a lot of virgin land around the world is going to be plowed up, you know, in these big land grabs or whatever. To produce more food, and using the genetically modified crops to do that. Herbicide-resistant crops are a recipe for destroying biodiversity, because like with Roundup Ready, you can plant corn and soybeans anywhere in the world and plow up the virgin land and then plant your crop and spray the hell out of it with Roundup, and you won't have to worry about weeds, at least for, you know, 10, 15, 20 years. And so it's a disaster. And besides that, when you think about corn and soybeans, they're basically made into animal feed. So it's meat, milk, and eggs, and also biofuels. Well, poor people can't afford meat, milk, and eggs, you know, or processed foods, and then they don't have cars to drive to put that fuel in their tank either. So this idea that we need to produce more corn and soybeans around the world is crazy as far as feeding hungry people goes.
Now there is a division in the ranks of those folks on the other side. They want to see less money for. Some of them want to see less requirements that feed go to ethanol. That corn in particular goes to ethanol.
Yeah.
I mean, does your group even get involved in that debate, Tristan?
Well, to some degree, but it's a complicated debate. I'm not too familiar with all the contours of it, but in general, yeah, I mean, food versus fuel is a real problem, is a real issue, and I mean, I think one of the biggest issues is that most of these land grabs happening in the global south, where you don't have very strong democratic governments or real protections for, you know, people who have been on the land for generations but may not have a technical title. In a lot of countries, governments technically own the land, so they're free to sell it at will, and there's not enough democratic accountability.
We've seen that in Tanzania with the Bruce Rastetter Agrosol land grab,
right? And
which our citizen activism has resulted in a significant decrease in the number of acres he wanted to appropriate.
Exactly, and it's a proud testament to the people of Iowa, I think. But
Well, and to the Oakland Institute in California, which has been a great ally.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
But a lot of these land grabs are being driven by agri-fuels because
agri-fuels.
Agri-fuels.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're not projects necessarily to feed people. They're projects to increase the fuel supply. And I think there is a dichotomy between food provision in agriculture and industrial raw material provision in agriculture. And I think I don't know where that line is, and I don't know where you come down on it in terms of what your policy should promote, but it is there. And actually, I do want to push back and say I don't think it's a logical conclusion that we need to grow more food. It's
an easy conclusion.
It's an easy conclusion, but I don't think it's logical. I mean, people should eat less meat.
And besides that, it's from a farmer's perspective, now a Monsanto representative comes to our community, and the first thing they try to tell us is that we have to pay more for their seeds so they can do research so we can produce more food to feed hungry people. Well, generally, when we produce more food, that means our prices go down. So why would a farmer want that?
Yeah.
And this idea that somehow you're going to get a perfect price, by making food scarce, on the one hand, by turning food into ethanol and things like that, and then it's an impossible balance. If you're just going to let the market decide whether food's scarce so farmers get a decent price, or food's going to be abundant so you can feed hungry people, those are two irreconcilable goals.
Folks, if you'd like to join the conversation with Tristan Quinn Thibodeau and George Naylor here on the Fallon Forum, we're talking food policy, we're talking the World Food Prize, and the response to that, the Food Sovereignty Prize. You're welcome to chime in. 244-0077, the number on your screen there, 855-244-0077. When we come back, I want to talk about I want to get your take, Tristan and George, on the various activities that have sought to respond to the World Food Prize, not just your effort, but some of the other efforts that have happened here in Des Moines, and to see where this movement's going, because there is a lot of tension right now between corporate agriculture and the GMO world and the rapidly growing organic local food initiative. So there's a lot of tension there, and I want to get your take on that as well. And again, folks, you're welcome to jump in. I do want to thank Reynolds Energy Solutions for helping to be a sponsor of this program. Tim Reynolds will come and do an audit for you for free. If you're in central Iowa, it'll cost you nothing. And he will tell you where all sorts of gaps in your home are: windows, doors, floorboards, the basement. I was amazed at how much energy is being lost in my residence, and Tim did a thorough audit, identified plenty of places where I could reduce my carbon footprint and save a bunch of money, and all that's done for free. And Tim's been a great supporter of this show. He believes in renewable fuels. He believes in conservation and energy efficiency. If you want to do your part to help move that issue forward and to support progressive alternatives to conservative talk radio, give him a call at 802-2801, 802-2801. We'll be back in a minute on the Fallon Forum.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 1 of WebcastOneLive.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait, howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going.
Hi, folks. It's Ed Fallon here. Proof Restaurant at 13th and Locust. You've probably been there for their award-winning, nationally recognized lunch specials. Well, now Proof is open Thursdays and Fridays for supper. And here's where the chefs really get creative. Let me tell you, they're like artists, okay? I've been there, and it is one of the best meals I have had in Des Moines. I've heard that from other people. You got to check it out. Proof for supper, Thursdays and Fridays, and also the second Saturday of the month. Do not assume you can get in. Make reservations. Contact Proof Restaurant online at proofrestaurant.com or 244-0655. That's 244-0655. Hi, folks. Ed Fallon here. When it is time to entertain, think of Gateway Market. Let them handle the details. Gateway offers a wide variety of stress-free options like cut-to-order cheese and charcuterie. There's a delicious olive bar and a wide variety of chef-prepared dips and spreads. Or let the catering team take care of the entire event, right down to the wine and beer pairings. The expert floral designers can even customize the perfect centerpieces. So stop by or visit Gateway Market for more information. Gateway is at Woodland and ML King in downtown Des Moines. Good food, great entertaining.
Nestled in the heart of downtown, Ritual Cafe is one of Des Moines' most unique places, offering a wide variety of coffee and tea. Ritual Cafe also serves the only all-vegetarian menu in town. And Ritual Cafe is a cultural hub for artists and musicians, with a performance stage hosting local, national, and international talent. Make Ritual Cafe a part of your daily ritual. On 13th Street between Locust and Grand in downtown Des Moines. And check out ritualcafe.com.
I love driving to Newton to see the races.
Me too, but I only have to drive across town.
You live in Newton?
Yep, Newton's got small town charm and it's close to Des Moines. I love the safe, friendly neighborhoods and family-owned businesses. And Newton's wind energy industry is really taking off.
How'd you find your home?
Dan Kelly with First Choice Realty. And Dan helped me find my office too.
Next time, instead of just speeding by, I'll stop in and check out Newton.
Why don't you check out Newton? Call Dan Kelly at 641-521-9260 or Dan Kelly at mchsi.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Hey, folks, that's Pumptown bringing us back to our conversation. This segment of the program is sponsored by Proof Restaurant. And my guest actually had supper recently at Proof Restaurant. What do you think, George?
Oh, yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah.
Tristan, anything like that in New York City?
No.
No, really?
Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, probably, but I've never been there.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really fantastic food at a very, very affordable price. I mean, I don't know what you'd pay for that in New York City.
It is. Oh, yeah.
Not in your salary.
Probably not.
No.
Not unless corn and beans are going through really particularly high prices, high levels of sale value. But yeah, Proof Restaurant. They're open now. They're again not just a lunch restaurant anymore, but they're open for supper as well, Wednesday through Saturday, and the fare is fabulous. I'm still drooling over the cheese board.
Oh boy.
Yeah, the cheese board was something. Anyway, I didn't know they could do so many things with cheese.
No, yeah.
Anyway, so check it out, folks. Proof Restaurant is at 13th and Locust in downtown Des Moines. Open now, Wednesday through Saturday for supper. All right, to our conversation with Tristan and with George. Again, George Naylor is a local farmer, local meaning Greene County, some of the best farmland in Iowa, where he raises non-GMO corn and beans, and it's a farm that's been in his family for a long, long time. Tristan Quinn Thibodeau is with Why Hunger. He joins us in the studio all the way from New York City. He's here for the Food Sovereignty Prize. And we've been talking about that a bit and why that's an important alternative to the World Food Prize. But there are a lot of things happening right now in response to the World Food Prize. There's growing concern about who it really represents and where it's going to take the conversation on agriculture in this country. There were some protests both at the Food Prize's headquarters. There were protests at the Capitol yesterday. What's your take on that response to the World Food Prize? And George, you jump in as well.
I think people ought to be protesting. But I wish there were hundreds of thousands of people protesting. The World Food Prize pulls the same error in thinking that many politicians do. They're always talking about some good thing. They never talk about all the, so you got the upside of something, but they never talk about the downside of something. So producing good, more food, that seems like a good thing. But, that you have to take into account what's the effect on the environment, what's the effect on concentrating wealth, the quality of food, and those kind of things. And, of course, they don't do that because they just want us to think that we have to buy the patented technology that the big corporations put out to produce more food and not look at the downsides of things. And it's been the same thing for a long time with organizations like the National Corn Growers Association. So I was on the Iowa Corn Promotion Board, the very first one back in 1978, and that was the idea there too. We were going to find more uses for corn to bring the price of corn up. In other words, make food scarce. So like I said, that's irreconcilable with me.
And what the idea is that in order to feed a growing world population and a population that is consuming more high protein diet, you gotta raise more food, and that has to be done by bigger operations because those are more efficient. And of course, that involves shipping this stuff all around the world. I mean, my sense is, why not encourage more localized, decentralized agriculture? I mean, it seems like the guy who actually won the prize this year is doing something good that can be used by sustainable farmers. That drip irrigation.
That's clear, and I think the protests are never over the laureates of the World Food Prize. The issue really with the World Food Prize is that it's the public face of agribusiness. And the thing about agribusiness is that it doesn't sell to normal consumers. It doesn't have a consumer brand. The World Food Prize is agribusiness's consumer brand.
And it's a warm and fuzzy one.
It's a warm and fuzzy one, but so one of the honorees for the Food Sovereignty Prize was the Coalition of Immokalee Workers, a group of farm workers based out of Immokalee, Florida. And for folks who don't know, farm workers basically work in slave-like conditions in much of the fruit and vegetable farms in the U.S. And
many of them are illegal immigrants who are brought here specifically to do that work, migrant labor.
There are push-pull factors for why people migrate. Many people don't have work anymore in Mexico or Guatemala due to U.S. foreign policies regarding agriculture.
NAFTA, for example.
NAFTA, for example. And, now that there's been a lot of state legislation cracking down on immigrants, making it, the self-deportation thing, and now a lot of crops are rotting in the field. So I just think, the way we talk about immigration and migration, especially in terms of agriculture, has to be very nuanced because it's very complicated. But what Coalition of Immokalee Workers did was they went straight to the top. They went to Taco Bell first, and they said, you're buying tomatoes that we're picking in the fields. We haven't had a raise in 20, 30 years. We have no recourse when women in the fields get sexually harassed or abused. We have no recourse when our bosses beat us up. We can't.
That's happening? Those things are happening?
Oh yeah. There's, members of Congress have gone down, have witnessed what the CIW calls the ground zero for modern day slavery. So there's so many reports. There's been, basically slavery rings of people who have trafficked workers from Guatemala into Florida and
is it just
chained into tractor trailer.
Gosh, is it just Florida, or do we see that in California and some of the other border states as well? How about Iowa? We have migrant labor coming here as well.
Yeah, I'm sure it's very similar with some of the processing plants.
There was that example of the turkey factory bringing mentally handicapped old men up here, so it's happened here in Iowa too.
They were brought here from Texas, of course.
But the point is that CIW was able to succeed because Taco Bell, they tried to go through their actual employers, who were these no-name tomato companies, and the no-name tomato companies said, well, we're being squeezed by the very top. We can't give you better wages. We can't hire more observers to check out the fields where you're working, make sure your conditions are okay. So they went to the very top and they engaged consumers, and consumers don't want to eat food that is grown unjustly. So, and I think that's what we're doing with the World Food Prize.
I was on an airplane once in Mexico, and in my airplane magazine there was an ad from Panama, and it says why you should build your second home in Panama. And the number one reason was because you could hire a maid for less than $100 a month.
Wow.
Okay, well, so you can see that.
Talk about shameless.
Yeah, well, the policy of a lot of countries around the world, and maybe that we're moving that way, is to have a really cheap pool of labor. And the way you get that is by moving rural people out of their communities and off their farms. So the policy of governments that have that attitude is not to help farmers. It's just to have cheap labor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it all kind of fits together.
All right. Hey, plenty more to talk about here, but we're running out of time. Thank you, Tristan Quinn Thibodeau with Why Hunger for joining us all the way from New York City, and George Naylor joining us all the way from Greene County, Iowa. Good luck.
Sheridan.
Yeah, Sheridan, actually, yes. Formerly the home of a very wonderful little Irish shop. How about that? Hey, folks, Bradshaw will be with you at 1:30. I'll be back with you on Monday at noon. I want to thank Webcast One Live for hosting this broadcast. I want to thank Maddie Arrington for being our wonderful producer. I want to thank my bike for always providing astute commentary. And I didn't get to ask my bike guy. I assume you are not a consumer of GMO products, Bike?
I don't think so.
No? You don't think so? It's really hard to know sometimes, isn't it?
It is.
What's your favorite food product?
WD-40. Sometimes Tire Black or Armor All.
Okay, well, WD-40, not exactly on the FDA-approved food group list. Maybe for bikes, it's okay. Hey, thanks again, folks, for joining us, and we'll talk to you on Monday. Have a great weekend.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks.
I'm just saying. 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 Ching ching. I'm just saying.